Let me read to you a passage from the 7th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 11 to 17. It's the Gospel for Tuesday of the 24th week of Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, Jesus journeyed to a city called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd accompanied him. As he drew near to the gate of the city, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. A large crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he was moved with pity for her, and said to her, "Do not weep." He stepped forward and touched the coffin. At this the bearers halted, and he said, "Young man, I tell you, arise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, exclaiming, "A great prophet has arisen in our midst, and God has visited his people." This report about him spread through the whole of Judea and in all the surrounding region. That's from Luke chapter 7, verse 11 to 17. We are led to think of suffering. What do I mean? Well, as we think of the event in this gospel passage, let us ask, has there been its equal in the history of the world? I do not mean that no one has ever raised anyone from the dead. We read in the Old Testament how the great prophet Elisha raised someone from the dead, and Peter does so also in the Acts of the Apostles. But neither of these did so with such immediacy, and so effortlessly as does Jesus in our scene today. He comes upon a funeral procession, leaving the town of Nain, and when he sees the poor widow accompanying the body of her son, he steps forward and at a word raises the young man immediately to life. The divine power of Christ. But the further question is, what does this almighty and astonishing power manifest? It manifests a profound and spontaneous compassion, which led to the exercise of this power. Christ's powerful works show forth his sacred heart. His heart is revealed as being profoundly compassionate in the face of suffering man. Long before, Yahweh God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, had appeared to Moses in the burning bush, and had said that he was aware of the sufferings of his people. He had compassion for them, and was now sending them a liberator. By the power of Yahweh, Moses would lead his people out of their oppression into the promised land. In this great liberating act, the power of Yahweh would manifest his compassion and reveal that he is a God rich in mercy. This is the unfolding theme of revealed religion. God is almighty and is only one in being. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. The power that he displays and exercises reveals that the heart of the one and only God is a heart of love and mercy. The greatest act of the heart of God is to have sent his divine Son, and now he, God the Son made man, dwells with men. In showing forth the power of God, he reveals his compassion and mercy. The Sacred Heart of Jesus is the special revelation of the Gospels. Christ gave back to the widow of Nain what she had lost. But what of all the other suffering widows in the land of Israel at the time? What of all the widows in the entire world at the time? That is to say, what of evil in the world? The world abounds with suffering, and it is clear that our Lord did not come to take away all of human suffering. My own impression is that the great stumbling block of many of our Jewish brothers in relation to Jesus Christ is that Jesus did not establish a time of peace and freedom from suffering. My understanding is that their reading of the Scriptures leads them to interpret the prophecies as pointing to a Messiah who will bring a kingdom to the earth that will more or less take away the suffering of man. This will be the answer to the problem of evil. The world flows with evil and suffering, and the question of the agnostic, the atheist, and indeed many believers is, what has Christ, since he is God, done about this? If Christ is God and lives among us in his church, which the church ceaselessly claims to be the case, he should surely be doing repeatedly what he did in today's gospel passage, only on a universal scale. He would be restoring to afflicted man what has been lost to him. Was Christ present during the Holocaust when there was repeat upon repeat of this scene of the funeral procession leaving the town of Nain? If he was, then Christ stood by without doing anything. This is the old and ever-recurring problem of evil. But no, his mission was to take away the sin of the world. And the miracles of Christ, such as the one in today's gospel, are signs of this. We do not know why God allows the world to remain broken and profoundly flawed as it is. In his wisdom and compassion, he will draw good out of evil, just as he drew untold good out of the death of his Son. Christ united himself with suffering humanity in his passion and death, thus showing that God's plan is not to take away suffering, but to make it the means of redemption and sanctification. By his passion and death, Christ redeemed the world. Christ is present in the midst of suffering man to make this very suffering the means of the transformation of man and the universe. The full transformation of all begins here and reaches its completion at the end. The raising of the son of the widow of Nain shows that God, in his compassion and love, has the power and the will to make all things new. Let us take our stand with Christ and take up the work. His work will be done if we follow in his footsteps. By living with him we shall die with him, and in living and dying with him we shall reign with him. Of his kingdom there will be no end.